Hi, welcome to Mrs. Thompson's classroom again. Today we're going to talk about using the unit circle. So if you remember, we talked about our unit circle. And on this unit circle, our radius is 1. And any point is found from the cosine and the sine of that angle. Okay? And so what that allows us to do is we were able to go all the way around the circle and we memorized all the ones at the pi thirds, the pi fourths, and the pi sixths, as well as the pi halves. We can memorize these. We found out how to find them from our triangles from geometry class. So today what we're going to do is we're going to use this unit circle to come and be able to find much larger angles. So 405 degrees is outside of this unit circle, right? One circle is 360. So the way we can reduce this is to remember our coterminal angles. So coterminal angles are the exact same angle. They have just been sent around the circle again. So by adding 360 or subtracting it or multiples of 2 pi. So what I can do is take cosine and subtract 360 degrees. And what we get is 45 degrees. Okay, so cosine of 45 degrees from our unit circle, if this was 45, we discovered that that point right there came from our 45, 45, 90 triangle. So everything was related by square roots of 2. Okay, so this will become square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so we can do the same thing here with 840 degrees. So I'm going to subtract 360. That's 480, so I'll do it again. And so what I really have is the tangent of 120 degrees. These two things are equal to each other because those angles are coterminal with each other. So 120 degrees is over here. Okay, that's the same thing as 2 pi thirds. And what we found is that at every pi thirds, the values were 1/2 and the square root of 3 over 2. And then because we're in quadrant 2, the x value is negative. So if I want tangent at that value, it's actually going to be sine of 120 over cosine of 120. So if you did not memorize your tangent values, you can calculate it. So this will be square root of 3 over 2 over negative 1/2. So I end up with negative square root of 3. So just by knowing my unit circle, I can find these values. Now this next example, sine of 25 pi thirds, is in radians. So instead of subtracting 360, we're going to subtract multiples of 2 pi. So because this is in thirds, I'm actually going to subtract 6 pi thirds because that's actually equal to 2 pi. Okay? And what I really need is to subtract a multiple of that to get less than 2 pi. So 2 pi would be 12 pi sixths. Okay, so if I subtract this twice, really what I have is 25 pi thirds minus, actually hold on, I don't want to be in sixths, do I? This will be in thirds, would be 6 pi thirds. Okay, so if I subtract 2 of these, that's subtracting out 12. So now I'm at 13 pi thirds, which is still too big, right? So let's do it again. And I get down to pi thirds. So you just keep subtracting the 2 pi till you get to a value that we know in quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so then we have sine of pi thirds And sine of pi thirds is the same thing as this 2 pi thirds. So this is the square root of 3 over 2. So if I know my unit circle, then I can find a whole variety of angles just by using coterminal. Now there's another piece of the pie here that we can talk about, and that's reference angles. Now a reference angle is if I take any angle. So let's say we have this angle here. So in standard position, this is actually theta all the way from the positive x-axis. Our reference angle just comes down from the x-axis. But what we find out is that when I'm talking about my trig values, if I continue that angle here, this is also r of theta. So I can use just quadrant 1's values to find all the rest of them around the circle. So let's find our reference angle. So if this is in quadrant 4, if I'm in quadrant 4, basically what I'm going to do is my reference angle is going to be 360 degrees minus that angle. Okay? So in this particular instance, 330 degrees came over here. Okay, and so my reference angle is this amount right here of what's left. Okay. All right, for 17 pi 12ths, what I have to do is figure out which quadrant I'm in. And so 12 pi 12ths would be pi. So I need to go 5 more 12ths. Well, let's think about this. 3 pi halves, which is the bottom here, if I multiply that to get to 12ths, would be 18. So 17 pi 12ths is down here. So I'm in quadrant 3. So if I'm in quadrant 3, I'm going to take, and what I really want to do is subtract away, if I want my reference angle, this is my reference angle. What I need to do is subtract this. Okay? So I'm going to take 17, let me get back to my other marker here. I'm going to take 17 pi 12ths, and I'm going to subtract the 180, which is pi. So that's 17 pi 12ths minus 12 pi 12ths. And so that's 5 pi 12ths. Okay. Now, how do we use this information to find cosine, sine, tangent values? Well, the first thing I would do is I would subtract out the values of 360 to get myself down to something in the unit circle. Okay, so 1320, I'm going to subtract multiples of 360. So let's go ahead and take out, I know I'm going to need to be able to take out multiples. So let's do 3 times 360 just to start and see where I'm at. So that's going to be 1320 minus 720. Okay, so that's going to end up getting me 600. Well, that's not quite enough. So let's take 600 and subtract 360 again. So that gives me 240 degrees. Okay, so on my unit circle, 240 degrees is down here. That reference angle, though, if all I memorized was quadrant 1, this reference angle is going to be 240 minus 180, which gets me 60 degrees. So really, the cosine of 1320 is going to have the absolute value of this will be the same as the cosine of 60 degrees. So this is going to, cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2 from my unit circle. But the 240, this right here, is in quadrant 3. So I know down there cosine is negative. Okay, so you can go from your coterminal value if you memorize the entire unit circle, or you can get down to that reference angle if you only are remembering quadrant 1. Okay, and that's especially helpful with the degrees because they're not quite as obvious once you get past 90 degrees. Okay, now what about the 29 pi 6th? Well, this one's in radians. Okay, and so what we're going to have to do is, first of all, subtract out multiples of 2 pi. So 29 pi 6th, if I subtract out 2 pi, is the same thing as subtracting out 12 pi 6ths. Okay, to subtract fractions, we have to have a common denominator, and that originally was 2 pi over 1. Okay, so this will get me 17 pi 6ths. So I can do that one more time. And I get down to 5 pi 6ths. Okay, now 5 pi 6ths is over here. And its reference angle is then just pi 6th. Okay, and so sine of 29 pi 6th is going to be the same as sine of 5 pi 6th, which is actually the same as sine of pi 6th because this one's in quadrant 2 and sine is positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. Okay, so hopefully that helps. We want to try to rely on our calculator as little as possible because we're going to get these long, non-ending, irrational numbers. And so if we can rely on our unit circle and an understanding of these coterminal and reference angles, then we can be precise as long as the angle is based upon our pi thirds, pi fourths, and pi sixths. Okay? All right, hope to see you next time. Thanks for joining me.